Hello everybody and welcome to IU's Intro to Artificial Intelligence course. I'm Jack Langston, one of the TAs for the course in spring 2018. Today we are going to help you set up your Git repository for the course. Now, most of you have probably used Git in some form or another in the past, and even if you haven't, that's completely okay. Today we're going to go step by step how to get you situated so that you can both receive the assignments that we distribute and submit them to your submission repository. Now, before we dive in too deep, just to go over some Git basics, essentially Git is a program that acts as a distributed version control system. Now, what that means is that you can create your source code on any computer and sync it to the same sort of directory structure on a variety of other computers, whether that's on a server like GitHub or whether that's on your local machine. And what that will allow us to do is distribute assignments with all the different configuration options already set up so that you can have an exact copy of the starter code on your computer as we created on our computers as instructors. And then you can make your edits and then push them up to a submission repository where they're basically all guaranteed to look similar. So it makes not only grading easier, but it avoids a lot of errors for you guys, as you are seeing the exact same code that the instructors would have. And therefore, the instructors have already vetted it and hopefully can answer any questions that you might have as the semester goes along. Now, first things first, I just want to draw your attention that there is a file that goes over everything that we're about to cover in this video on the Canvas site under the Python Git instructions folder. It's just called Git, but it goes through how to set up not just the Git program on your computer, but also your GitHub account, which is where you'll be storing the code that you create this semester. So for those of you who have used Git before, you probably already have Git installed on your computer, but if you don't, you can navigate over to this website right here, which we'll include in the show notes, and it has the downloads for all three major operating systems right here, as well as some graphical user interface clients in case you don't like using the command line. Git can kind of trip students up at first because it is the original program is completely command line based, and we'll be using the command line today, but feel free to use a GUI client if you're more comfortable doing stuff that way. That being said, throughout the semester, we'll probably, from the instructor side of things, only be using the command line just because that's kind of the common way to use Git, and we won't really be able to help you set up your GUI clients if you end up going that way. So just a word of warning. So I'm going to assume that you can download and install a program, so we won't go through that sort of demo right now. But what we will do is go through the steps that you'll take once you have downloaded and installed Git. So if you head on over to the GitHub account where the distribution repository is hosted, and this should again be something that we provide in the show notes to this, and navigate to the distribution repository. So for this semester, it just happens to be called CSCI B351 SP18/distribution. We click that and you can kind of see here's where we'll be publishing the assignments. And so what you'll want to do is you'll want to go to this clone or download link, take this link right here, copy it, and then you'll want to move over to a command line. If you are using Windows, you'll be using kind of, I think it's called the command prompt. But once you've downloaded Git, it should come with this thing called Git Bash. And I would highly recommend that you use Git Bash instead of just your normal command line, because you'll be able to utilize the Unix commands that I'm about to show you right now. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to navigate to the directory that you want to store your code for this semester. So basically all your code is about to go into this directory structure that we create. So pick your location wisely. I mean, of course you can move it later if you want to. I've decided to put it in my home directory, and what I'm going to do is just do the commands git clone, and then I'm going to paste that URL. And it's as simple as that. It'll ask you to log in to your GitHub account. This semester we're using the IU Enterprise GitHub account, so you'll use just your CAS username and password. Okay, so now we have this folder in here, right, that wasn't here before, called distribution. Now, the good thing is you can name this whatever you want to. So I'm going to actually name it, let's see, I'm going to name it B351. So now I've got my B351 folder. I'm going to CD into it, B351. So now I'm inside of it, and I can see, okay, it looks exactly like what we have here on the GitHub interface. So we've got the A1 directory, we've got the README, and so basically you've cloned the code that we've provided for you on the GitHub server, which is phenomenal. Now, the instructions in the file ask you to do a couple of things related to the Git backend. And so what we're going to do is we are going to rename the Git repository to distribution. So if you come here and you look at Git remotes, these are kind of your repositories that you have. So git remote-v will show you basically what other repositories are linked to this local repository. And you can see that the distribution repository that we just cloned, which is the one that's up on GitHub, is both our fetch and our push repository. And its name in the Git system is called origin. We want to rename that to be distribution because we're going to add another sort of connection, remote connection, called submission. And so we'll do git remote rename origin distribution, and that will set everything up. So we will have, if we do that command again, git remote v, git remote v, we can see that it now says distribution. So now, if you're familiar with Git, you've probably done all of these steps before, and everything has looked pretty familiar. This next thing that we're about to do is going to be kind of an extension on what you've probably seen in the past. So I drew a little diagram just to show you how this course is going to work. Essentially what we have is we're going to have two different, I guess every student will have two different repositories up on the GitHub cloud. The distribution repository, which we've already seen, and you'll also have your own private submission repository. Now, all the students in the course are going to share this distribution repository, but only you are going to be able to see your private submission repository. And what's going to happen is that the instructors are going to put new starter code packs and instructions for the assignments into the distribution repository. You're going to pull those changes down into your local computer, and then you're going to basically primarily interface with this submission repository. So anytime you make a change, you'll push it up, and then if you want to pull down stuff later, you can pull it down. And what we'll do is we'll look at your submission repository for your kind of final code for the assignments. And so this is kind of abnormal because usually you just have kind of this local remote pairing, and you've never really seen, at least I guess you've probably never seen a two kind of remote structure. Fortunately, it's very easy to set up in Git, and we're going to go through how to do that right now. So, the first thing is, let's go see if we can find our submission repository. Now, we've already created repositories for all students in here, which is the Intro to Artificial Intelligence organization. Now, you can't see all of these, but you should be able to see your submission repository. And so, for example, here's mine right here. This is my username, dash submission. And you can see it's empty right now. There's nothing in it. But here is the link, the Git link that we can use to connect the local repository that we just created to this GitHub repository. So I'm going to copy that, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to that command line. Where is it? Right there. And then I'm going to do another git remote command. I'm going to do git remote add, and then I'm going to name this submission, and then I'm going to put that URL right there. So I've got git remote add submission. So now if I go to git remote -v, what I have is I've got the two repositories. I've got distribution and I've got my submission. So now the kind of the workflow that you'll have is you'll pull from distribution and you'll push to submission. We'll do a quick one-time showing of how to do that right now, but we'll also provide another video that'll show you just kind of the basic workflow commands that you'll need to use throughout the semester, in case you're not already familiar with Git. So in cloning everything, we've already pulled the most up-to-date version of the code, but if you didn't have the most up-to-date version of the code, what you would do is you would do git pull master distribution. And what does this mean? It means that we want to pull the master branch of Git from the distribution repository. You don't really need to worry about what the master branch means. You can just think of it as that's the main code that's in your repository. If you want to get more involved into Git, I would recommend that the first thing you learn is the different branching mechanisms, because those are super helpful. But in this class, you won't really need to do that at all. So if we run this, git pull, maybe it's distribution master. Yeah, sorry, I had the commands flipped. It's git pull distribution master. So what you'll do is it'll be the first thing will be the remote repository, and then the second thing will be the branch. So again, you'll put in your CAS information, and it should give you something that says you're already up to date, and that's because we just cloned it. So it's unlikely that the instructors have pushed anything to the repository in the time that we've been spending here just or setting up your Git information. So the second step, and this is probably the most important step, is how do you get that into your submission repository? So again, we're just in our folder that we copied down from GitHub. And what we're going to do is we are going to do a sequence of 3 commands. So let's say we made a new file. So I'm going to do something like, let's say, test.txt. Okay, so I've got this. I'm just saying new information. So this is emulating, if you had created a new file and you wanted to save it to your GitHub account. So we save that there, and so we should see that now we've got this test.txt file. So what we would do is we would come to the top level of our directory, as this is what I like to do. Now there are multiple ways to do it, and you can kind of choose which one you want, but if you're just new to this, the easiest way to do it is git add period. And what that does is it adds everything in your current working directory, including all the subdirectory information, basically everything. So you do git add, git add dot, and then if you do git status, you should see, okay, these are the changes that you're about to commit. So there's 3 steps. There's the staging, which we just did, there's the committing, and then there's the pushing. So once we have it staged, we can do git commit, and then you just do -m and you type a little message. So you just say, this is my first commit. So So now it says, okay, you've changed one file, blah, blah, blah. It gives you some information. If you do git status, it should say nothing to commit. You're all up to date. So all of the changes that you've made in your repository are okay. However, this just means that your local directory is all kind of set up properly. It doesn't mean that you've actually sent anything to a remote server. So in order to send your changes to the remote server, in this case your submission repository, what you'll do is you'll do git push. Let's see here. I want to do submission master. And so if we run this command, it should populate your submission repository. Okay, you should be all good to go. So if you come back up to your GitHub account right here and you refresh the page, there we go. You can see we've got not only the stuff from the distribution repository here, but we've got the changes that we've added here as well. Now, you'll notice that if we go back to the distribution repository, that we didn't change that at all. So even though we pulled all the code from the distribution repository and we made changes to it on our local computer, we only sent those changes to the repository that we explicitly listed, in this case the submission repository. So that'll be kind of the workflow. So again, to remind you one more time, we are going to pull from the distribution repository, and then we're going to push up to the submission repository. And if you're working on multiple computers, you'll obviously synchronize them via pulling from the the submission repository once you've put your code up there. So that's kind of all there is to it. Let me go back to our command line. You really are now all set up. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to show you was that if you come to the course website, which you can access via Canvas, so right here, and you go to the GitHub validator, this will make sure that you've done everything correctly. So just if you want kind of that second check, other than the visual check that we just did, here it is. So you can see here's everybody's who's in the course, and here's their kind of their status. So some of the students are already set up, they're good to go. Let's see if we can find me on here. Nope, it doesn't look like I'm on here. I don't think that I get to be on here because I am not a student. That being said, you should definitely be on here. So once you are configured, you should have a little green box next to your name. And that is all. If you have any questions, obviously post to the Piazza board, and we'll hopefully get you all set up and good to go before this first assignment is due.